Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are. Thanks for joining us today. This is Light Up. T- Today, I will be your host, Shalom Salaranji, and here is my co host, Emmanuel Oluabi. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Hi, I'm feeling good too. And I want to thank everybody who's watching us today. Back to you.
Today, our topic will be Cain and Abel, the jealous brother. As we know, after Adam and Eve got kicked out of the garden, they had to make a family of their own, and they conceived two boys, Adam, my bad, Abel and Cain. Cain was the firstborn, and Abel was the secondborn. Abel was a shepherd, and Cain was a farmer. It came to a day where they had to make offerings for God, and Abel decided to make his offering the firstborn of his sheep, and that sheep was probably the fattest one that he had, and he offered it to God. Meanwhile, Cain offered one of his fruits to God. It ended up that God decided to accept Abel's offer instead of Cain's, and Cain's was mad about it. So God asked him about it, but he didn't say anything, and God told him not to let sin get to him. Then later on, Cain was talking to Abel in the field, and he killed Abel. Then God asked him where his brother was, and he said that he didn't know. But deep down, God knew that he was lying. So then he marked Cain so that whoever found him would know to kill him. What do you think about that, and what do you think we can learn about that story?
One thing that know that we can learn from that story is that we shouldn't just let jealousy take over our action because Cain got mad at Abel just because God accepted his brother's offering, Abel, instead of his, because in the term that I would say is that the reason God accepted Abel was because he was pure of heart. He wasn't like Cain, who was jealous of Abel because Cain thought that Adam and Eve, their parents, liked Abel more. So then, when they're out in the field, Cain's jealousy got the best of him, and then he killed his brother Abel. Then God asks what he's done, and then Cain replies with, "Am I my brother's keeper?" He doesn't, and then he doesn't. Pretends like he doesn't know, but God who knows, sees, and hears everything. So God said, "Why did you kill your brother? Because his blood is crying out from the ground." And then, as you said, that God made a mark. It was not apparently because God said that whoever killed Cain would have sorrow in their lives seven times repeatedly. So that's the lesson we learned that we shouldn't let just jealousy and anger take the best of what we do in our actions. What do you think about that?
I agree with you, and I think that another thing we should understand about Cain and Abel's story is that God doesn't care about how much you give him, but he cares about whether you cared about what you were offering to him or if you just gave it to him because it physically looked more than what the other person, Abel, gave to him. But Abel gave God the best thing that he had in all of his sheep. But Cain just gave him a regular fruit out of his garden instead of maybe one of the best fruits that he had that he knew God would really like, and that he doesn't he wouldn't even want to give to God, but he knows that God is his Lord, and that he should give it to him no matter what. What do you think about that?
I agree with you because we can have, like, I'm gonna use an example from at church. Like, let's say from your tithe, you just give out $5, and then somebody just gives 100. God doesn't really matter how much you give. It matters if you actually care about Him and know Him. Because if you're a sinner and you just do it to look good, you God won't accept it. Just like how He didn't accept Cain's, because even though Cain bring fruit, he didn't really care about God, and he thought that Adam and Eve was just talking about God because it was a myth, and also bring the worst fruits out of his crop, which made, I would also say that that's the reason why God didn't accept Cain's offering. And that one lesson we should learn from that is that we can bring the lessons amount of money out of everybody, but God can only just accept ours because of we actually know Him, unlike the others just doing it for show. What do you think about that?
I agree with you, and I think that your example explaining how if someone gave $100 bill at church as offering, most people would think that, oh, God is going to choose this because it's more money than if someone gave $1 as their offering. But if that person really thought, oh, God is my Lord, and it doesn't matter how much I give him, but it matters if I worship him. And that could have been like their tithe, and they were giving it to God because they respect him. But it could be another person that's just giving a $100 bill so that they don't have to worry about offering for like the next month. What do you think about that?
I agree with you because even though some people do it for show, it's a sin against God. That's why He rejected Cain's, and that we shouldn't just give things to people for show. Like, let's say this is an example. Like, let's say there's a poor man on the street, and there's a ton of people there. Like, let's say you're in New York doing this, the square, and then there's a ton of people there, and then you give him money, and you're only doing it. You're not doing it because you're generous. You're only doing it just because you want people to think that you are, even though you really aren't. And then it's just like you shouldn't you shouldn't act like something you're not. Like, you shouldn't act like you're a believer even though you're really not. You shouldn't act like you know God more than everybody, but you really know the least amount of out of everybody. What do you think?
I agree with you, and I think another lesson that we can learn about Cain and Abel's story is that you shouldn't murder because it's part of the Ten Commandments. It tells us that we should not murder because murder is when you purposefully kill someone else. And killing someone is a really bad thing to do, even though God sees all sins the same way and at the same level. If you really think about it, that's something horrible to do to another person who is no better or no lower than you. No one should have to go through that or have to be killed because someone else was jealous of them or they did it out of their own choice. If someone were to kill someone, most likely the police would find them and they could serve up to like 10 years in prison because of what they did to one person. And it can be even more than that, especially when it's multiple people that have been murdered. What do you think about that?
I agree with you because the reason I agree with you is because you can't just escape any consequence. Like, it was literally impossible for Cain to escape what he did. So now he has a consequence so that he is going to have sorrow in his life. And the reason that God said that nobody should kill him, I think it was because that was his punishment, that he will have it until he dies, not until somebody necessarily kills him. It's until he dies. So Cain's punishment was basically just for life. Just like you said, murdering people now can also, even though sometimes it might land you for 10 years, it's mostly going to be for life because of what you did. and then you're just killing somebody just because out of jealousy and anger. Like you're taking your anger out on somebody else who didn't even do anything to you. What do you think about that?
I agree with you, and I think that when people try choose to murder people, either they aren't thinking in the right way and they're not thinking about what the consequences are. Just like how a lot of people like to say you can run but you can't hide. You can run away from your problems and stuff, but you can never run away from it permanently. It's always going to be there bothering you. No one wants to live in fear knowing that they could be caught by the police because they murdered someone. No one wants to do that, so they should be thinking about the consequences of what would happen if they did murder someone, and they should just not decide to do it at all, because murdering someone never benefits you since it's something negative and it could make you feel worse on the inside, especially when you go to jail. What do you think about that?
What I think about that is because even though you said that some people just kill people just because they're not in their right in the mind, they're not thinking correctly. But for some people, I've heard that they just do it like, let's say you have an auntie, they're just mean to you and your father, your mother, and then they just kill your parents just because they know that after own having you in custody, they're gonna have the money that your parents left you. So that some people just do it for money, and some people are just bounty hunters, just hunting people down for money because people send them to. What do you think?
I agree with you, and I think that that's another problem that a lot of people have, is that they're always thinking about money, which is in the physical world, and not thinking about what they can get in the spiritual world. When it comes to spiritual wealth and physical wealth, when you think about physical wealth, you're mostly going to think about money. But when it comes to spiritual wealth, it's when you have God and you're in heaven living an amazing life with Him. Because nothing amounts to having God with you. Because when you die, you're not going to bring that money with you. That money is only going to be a temporary enjoyment until Judgment Day. And we should also know that we should take accountability for what we do, because Cain, he was acting as if he didn't know that he killed. He was asking questions to God and saying that he didn't know where Abel was, but in reality, he knew where Abel was. He was the one who killed Abel, but he was telling God that he didn't know. So he wasn't taking accountability for what he did wrong, because he most likely knew he was going to get in trouble. But the jealousy got to him, and the envy just made him very angry. And he just decided to go with it out of anger and no self control. What do you think about that?
I agree with you. Because some people just lose their self control because of anger, envy, and jealousy. And there's one thing that I wanted to talk about because there's a difference from envy being and having envy and jealousy. Because jealousy is just like you are either mad or what like you're mad or you just want to be like that person. And envy is like when one person has this thing, you get mad because you don't have it. And there's this one thing I wanted to say before that, like, let's say in school you steal somebody's pencil case and they really need it. And then when the teacher asks everybody, you say that you don't have it. And then you just have it, just knowing that some people actually do know about it. Like probably some of your friends know about it and they could tell on you anytime. So it's just like having, you know that you're going to get in trouble, but you just don't want to. And you're just going to wait it out until somebody tells on you. It's just like having a burden on your back. Like it's not gonna get off your back until you actually tell a teacher about it or tell the person that you had it. What do you think about it?
I agree with you, and I think that something else we should be careful around is having wrath. Wrath is different from anger. Anger is just an emotion that everyone is born with and that is natural. Anger is just when you get mad about something, but it depends on the way you treat that anger. If you treat it unhealthily or if you treat it in a healthy way. Treating it in a healthy way is when you calm yourself down and don't lose your self-control. Self-control is something good to have because it stops us from doing things that we're really going to regret in the future. Having wrath is when you have so much anger built up inside of you and that causes you to sin. And in Cain's case, he decided to kill Abel, which is something that we need to learn how to have self control and to control our anger because when our anger gets out of hand or we don't control it in time, a lot of bad things could happen. Something worse could have happened to Abel, but in his case, he just got killed by Cain, which is why we should learn that there are many different ways to control your anger, like taking deep breaths or just talking to God about it. Because when you talk to God about something, He's always going to find a way to He's always going to figure it out for you and help you in the future. I think, I think this is a wrap for tonight, but you can say some of the lessons that we learned.
Some lessons that we learned is that we shouldn't have wrath because when you have wrath, you can accidentally or purposefully take it out on somebody else. We also learned that we shouldn't let envy, jealousy, and anger take over our actions. Like we shouldn't just hurt somebody because you're mad at somebody else for doing that thing. One more thing to say is that we shouldn't give for show. We should give because we are generous. We know God. We know that if we do it, there's something good gonna happen to us and everyone. It's gonna have an effect on everyone. But people who give for show is just people who give just to look generous. And I think that's what I have for tonight. Back to you.
Some lessons that we learned is that we should take accountability for our actions, whether if it's good or it's bad, because it's going to end up making you feel relieved that you don't have to keep anything a secret and keep it away from God. Another thing that we should know is that we shouldn't murder because murder is something really bad to do, especially right now in America because you could face a while in prison. And when you go to prison, a lot of advantages that you had before you aren't going to have before because of criminal records. Another lesson that we have learned is that we shouldn't envy because when we envy, it means we have jealousy. Like you said before, jealousy and envy are two different things. Envy is when you start to despise someone else because of what they have, and then you turn to sin to deal with it for you, and you end up doing something that you're going to regret in the future. Like what Cain did, he killed Abel. I think that's a wrap for tonight, but is there anything else you would like to say?
The last thing I want to say is that to everybody watching, we would please like for you to follow, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.